before I started Edgar Sherman Design, I knew that I wanted to help people and that I wanted to solve problems. I wasn't sure how I was going to do so until I was medically disqualified from enlisting. After I was disqualified, I realized that if I applied what I learned in college for industrial design and all of my interest and passion for serving, if I brought those two worlds together, I could create some of the best solutions. And that's exactly how the ESD Sling was born. It's the very best functionality without any of the distractions. It's simple, lightweight, made 100% in the USA, meaning it's very compliant, and it truly adapts to you. There are a lot of unique benefits to the ESD Sling. Everything is very thought out, tested, and purposeful, and I want to show you what those things are now. Jumping to the front section here, you have your quick adjust. It's designed so that way you can manipulate it just by pulling it back, or to tighten up, all you have to do is pull it forward. This is really important because it allows for you to adjust your sling on the fly without having to think about it. There's no cam buckle system in here that requires you to open it up and apply counter pressure or anything of the like. All you have to do is pull this back or pull this forward like so. Built into the quick adjust system here is an elastic regulator. The reason for this design is to not only regulate the webbing as it travels to prevent any jamming, twisting, binding, or anything of the like, but it's also set up as an elastic retainer for the rear section of the sling. So you can take the rear section of the sling and you can stow this into the elastic. Now you can have this tied up against your rifle, so that way it's not dangling and you're getting in your way for storage, vehicle work, transportation, whatever it may be. And when you're ready to deploy it, all you have to do is pull on it. The ESD pull tab is featured on all ESD slings. It comes standard. It's designed so that as you're trying to make adjustments, it's not slipping through your fingers. It's easy to get consistent, reliable adjustments, and it's designed to have a breakaway force of around 45 pounds. So if this loop does get caught on something, piece of gear, something in the room, whatever it may be, it's designed so that way it's not going to break from normal wear and tear, but if you need to present your rifle, it's going to break away and it's not going to snag you and keep you from doing your job. When I designed the rear section of the ESD Sling, simplicity is a key detail that I wanted to incorporate. And what I mean by that is I didn't want to have the users having to weave a bunch of material to make any sort of adjustments. Whether it's on the fly, passing it to your friend, or if you're putting on a plate carrier, you need a little bit more length. I didn't want you to have to take off your sling, adjust it 20 times by weaving a bunch of webbing back and forth. I wanted it to be super simple. So all you have to do to adjust this rear section here is slide this tri-glide towards the quick adjust, like so. And now you have more length. If you want to tighten it up, all you have to do is take that tri-glide, slide it towards this tag, and you're good to go. One of the main factors about this rear section here is the amount of adjustability that you can get out of this. So if you need to increase length, you can max this out and you can just keep this going until it's a really, really large system. And again, if you want to cinch this up because you're a smaller figure, you just got to pull this all the way through, get past the tag, and cinch this up here, and now you have this a lot tighter. If for some reason you are a really small figure and you feel like you're running out of range, all you have to do is remove some of that length by going through here. And now you can get this nice and tight all the way through, and you can cut some of the excess webbing off if you have to, or you can tape it off if you want to keep that nice and compact. But you don't have to worry about a certain limited range. So if you wanted to get this down to be almost next to nothing, you could do so. Combining the quick adjust section and the rear section is an ITW tri-glide. And why I chose this versus some of the other buckles that are out there that might be a little bit simpler or smaller is because I wanted separation between these two adjustment methods. And why I wanted that is so that way you don't have any issues of friction or any sort of wear that helps inhibit some of your motion. On the ESD Sling, all of the hardware is made up of a nylon. The reason why I chose to go with plastic over metal is because there's actually a lot of benefits. One of those benefits is that you have less noise whenever you're moving around, so these plastic pieces here aren't going to have as much of an impact up against the side of your metal receiver or anything of the like. Another benefit too is that you don't have a large section of metal that's swinging around on your sling and can smash into your optics and potentially scratch or break glass. The plastics do really well in a wide range of environments, so if you're going to an Arctic condition or you're going to a desert, high heat, Sahara, whatever it may be, the plastic's not going to melt on you, it's not going to freeze on you and cause a bunch of issues. A lot of slings that are on the market use metal systems with a bunch of different moving parts, cam buckles, you name it. And by having those large metal blocks, it's easy for ice, snow, whatever to freeze to that metal. Whereas by having the polymer systems here, you don't have any of those issues. To support US-based companies and to allow for military use, everything in this sling is very compliant. All of the webbing, all of the elastic, all of the thread used in the stitches, manufacturing, the pull tabs are all made in the US with US materials, US dyes, and everything. So when I say this is 100% made in the USA, I mean it. Moving on to your attachment methods here, you have an open-ended system. What this means is you can use whatever attachments you want to use. You can use paracord, HK hooks, QD swivels, whatever's out there that connects the sling to the rifle. One other key feature to this is that the webbing is folded over and bar tacked at each end. What this means is that when you have this set up, you're not going to have to worry about tripling back on your tri-glide or anything of the like. So when you're setting up your sling and you're going through here, it might be a little bit difficult to get that through, but now you know that you have a peace of mind that this isn't going to come undone when you don't want it to come undone. The first step to installing an ESD sling is figuring out where you're going to install it on the rifle or pistol system, whatever it's going to be. Also figuring out what hardware that you're going to use. So the main options are QD swivels, HK hooks, and my favorite, good old-fashioned paracord. So each have their purposes and their benefits. QD swivels are great for swapping one sling around to other rifles, changing up locations on the gun on the fly. Downsides are is they add a bit more weight, a bit more noise, extra metal parts, a lot of small moving parts in here with ball bearings, so more areas to fail. HK hooks are pretty outdated, but they're pretty universal for mounting onto AKs or old G3s and FALs, whatever it is, which is nice, but again, make a lot of noise rattling against the side of your rifle, bulky and heavy, more weight. But paracord is my favorite because it's super lightweight, it's easily replaceable in the field. Almost everyone has paracord, so you can adjust it, set it up to wherever you want. Saves weight, saves noise, super affordable. So once you've figured out what method you're going to use for attaching onto your rifle, then we have to figure out the locations on your gun and how you're going to set it up. So right here we have an MCX. We've got a folding stock on here, which is an important detail to understanding how you're going to set up your sling. We've got a 10.5-inch rail here, so it goes out somewhat far, but not too big. And just figuring out where you're going to have it and why for whatever your shooting purposes are. For most long-distance precision shooting guns, I highly recommend you mount it further down the rail, so that way if you are using any tripods, whenever you're loading up that rifle in that tripod, you have more tension that you can apply, create more leverage, and get that gun really locked in there. A lot of snipers use that technique. I learned that from the guys at Ridgeline Defense, and it's super helpful to loading up that system there. Mounting closer to the receiver gives you a little bit more play when you're moving around, so if you want a little bit more flexibility, you might want to mount there. Mounting on the stock or on the back side of the receiver have some different benefits as well. Mounting on the back side of the receiver gives you more of a feel like a single point sling. The downside is sometimes that your stock will get in the way and get you caught up on things. Mounting on the rear side of the stock is typically what I recommend and what I think that a lot of users are doing. There's two different ways that you can mount this depending on HK hooks, QD swivels, or paracord. My personal preference is to mount with paracord on the back face. QD swivels work really well too. You'll see a lot of guys mounted on the opposite side, so that way when the rifle's slung up against you, it keeps everything nice and tight. I encourage you to explore where you mount your sling because you're going to find different benefits from each position and downsides from each position. So the first method I'm going to show you is using paracord because this is my favorite and I think there's a lot of benefits to it. So jumping into the stock section of it, the reason why paracord really stands out to me is because I can tie this on here and get it to roll over to both sides. So if you're ever doing any shoulder transitions, a lot of times when you mount a sling with QD swivels or something that's in a fixed area in the stock here, when you're transitioning shoulders, sometimes you'll feel that you're getting choked out from that 2-point sling. So if you use paracord, you can actually create a loop on this back section that as you transition that shoulder, it's gonna move side to side, and it gives you a lot more freedom, a lot more play, and allows for it to really adapt to you. We're gonna grab our sling now and go to the rear section, where you can see the ES tag is. Now we're going to go to this end here, which is open-ended. You're going to feed this through your paracord loop and you're going to go over the knot through the tri-glide. It's important to go through both sections of the tri-glide. It might take a little bit of work because of the folded over end, but that just means it's not going to come out. Then once you get through that first bit, I like to cinch this knot into this area here, and then I can pull this really tight and feed it the rest of the way through. This just helps keep the knot out of the way, keeps it nice and clean and simple, and you're good to go. One important detail here is you don't want a lot of tag here, just because it means there's less adjustment room potentially. You want to focus most of your adjustment through this sewn-in section here. But once you're set there, you're good to go. And to demonstrate that shoulder transition technique, you can see that it rotates freely over side to side. And because we went with a larger tolerance, if it gets stuck back here, it can still pop up and over, so you're not running into any issues. If you're choosing to use a QD swivel here, then similar process, you're just going to loop the rear section through here. I'm going to get this tri-glide a little bit closer so I don't have a large tail. And then you're going to feed it back through, making sure that you go through both sections of the tri-glide, following the existing webbing that's in there. Pull that through. Make sure you don't have a big tail. And then when you're going to use a QD port here, a lot of shooters have been using this on the opposite side actually. So rather than mounting it on your close face here, you'll see a lot of instructors and other shooters out there mount to the opposite side like so. It helps keep the rifle a little bit closer to you whenever you have it slung. Now we're going to jump to your front quick adjust section here and set this up onto your rifle. Again, you have QD swivels, HK hooks, and paracord, and all have their benefits. Sometimes I'll run one of these in the rear end and another one of these in the front section here. So it really depends on your needs. I recommend that you explore it. If you're going to use an HK hook, same concept that you did for the rear section. You're just going to weave this through and get this set up. When you're setting this up on the rifle, it's important to know where you're going to be mounting it though. So on the MCX platform, you could mount on these inside rail faces here. I wouldn't really recommend HK hooks for this. It's probably going to cause more issues than it's going to do good, and it's going to make a lot of noise. QD swivels are probably going to be your best bet. You have to have an adapter on here to mount that QD swivel. So in this case here, what I'm going to do for this rifle is I'm going to actually use paracord, because now I can tie this anywhere on the rail here, and I can get it set up to exactly how I want it and what my needs are. So for this setup here, based on where my hand placement's going to be, I'm going to mount closer to the receiver here, and I'm going to show you how to do so. First step is taking your paracord, and I'm going to go through the lower section here and then into the upper section. So as you can see here, a pretty wide placement. The only things that are really important to know about this is that depending on your rail, you're going to get some wear from movement of the sling on the paracord. So every few months I like to check on this and make sure that it hasn't cut through too much. It really takes a long time before it's really going to cut through, but it will wear it over time. You can also use shrink wrap, things of the like, to cover this, add a little bit more lifespan to it. But overall, paracord's really cheap, it's easy to replace, and the benefits outweigh the downsides. So I'm going to slide that through here just like I did. I'm going to create an overhand knot, and I'm going to get this pretty tight to the rifle. I don't want a lot of extra play to this area here. That only causes more issues. And by having it tight to the rifle, it's just going to keep it clean and allow for my quick adjust to really do the work that I want it to do. So I've got that through here. Clean up that knot, get this nice and tight, like so. That's pretty well spaced. There's still enough room for me to insert the sling through here, and that's good to go. Again, I recommend that you get this set up to how you want it before you go and cut it and melt it down, because if you do feel like you want to actually switch further down the rail, this gives you that paracord to play with. Taking your front quick adjust section, just to make things a little bit easier, I'm just going to adjust this back, get that out of my way. Now I'm going to take this front section here, go between the rail and the paracord. As you can see, there's a separation there, that's locking that in. Move this back a little bit, just give me a little bit more real estate. I'm going to slide this through here, get that cinched up nice and good. Now go back through the end here. So now that front section is perfectly locked in. It's not getting in the way of anything. And now when I'm gripping onto my rifle, I know that I'm good to go because it's actually going to be behind my hand here. Obviously, you're going to cut those down if this is the right place for you and get it set up like so. So we figured out where we want to mount the sling to the rifle. We're choosing paracord in this setup here for this MCX, and now we're going to do the final steps. Again, I recommend that you test everything before, figure out where you want it before you cut the paracord and melt it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut the excess paracord. It's important to not get too close to the knot here and give a little bit of room just so that way when you melt it, it's not going to come undone easily. But you also don't want to have a huge tail. So I go right about here. There's no perfect way to do it, but that's what I like to do. I'll take the lighter now, get this going, melt up the ends. You can melt up the actual knot a little bit too, help get that all together. Check on the other side too, make sure it's nice and consistent. Flatten those edges. It's pretty good. I'd cinched it up really tight beforehand too, so it's not going to go anywhere. Now that one's all set, same process as before with all the other methods. Get that webbing nice and through there. Trace back along the tri-glide, cinch that up nice and tight to hide that knot, and trace your way back through just like that. Don't have a huge tail here, so it's not going to get in the way. We're good to go. You can also go the opposite direction if you want to. The important part is that you have the tri-glide set up like so. What I mean by that is if you want to fold this and have this hidden on the inside face. Not much of a difference either way. The key detail here is that you have the webbing going back through the tri-glide as so. Set up there. Now we'll do the same for the rear section here. So hold this nice and tight. It's set up so that there's space, so if it does go onto the butt pad here, that there's no issue of it returning over here and you're not getting jammed up. Same thing as the front section. Give a little bit of space, slice that off, toss that extra paracord, melt the ends, let them fuse together, take the lighter, push it up against flat there. Now I'm going to melt the knot a little bit more, get that all cinched and set. That's all good now. So I'm going to make sure that my sling is aligned properly and that it's not twisted in any ways. Weave this through here. And again, trace back here through the tri-glide. Next, we're going to get this set up to our body, make sure that it's good and how we want it. What I recommend is you open up the quick adjust here, get that nice and loose. We're going to put this over my body here, take that quick adjust, cinch that up nice and tight. Now, general rule of thumb, what I've been told is you want to have the butt plate here about level with your sternum almost. Some people like it a little bit looser, some like it a little bit tighter. Find out what's best for you. For me, I like to be able to present my gun in my shoulder and get this set. Cinch it up a little bit more if I need to, but be able to have the gun presented. I have a little bit of play right now that I might get rid of, and I'm going to tighten that rear section just to show you what that's like. But either way, I can get this nice and tight here. To adjust that rear section, again, I want this tighter, so all I'm going to do is move this tri-glide a little bit further back. Tightening that up, going through. That's a pretty good position there. It rests in a way that I want, and I can present that gun. There's not a lot of slack in here, and it's a good position for me. I can adjust that section there. I can transition shoulders, make engagements like so, and I'm good to go. That's one of the benefits here of having the paracord is that this is going to rotate with you as you move. So as I'm doing these transitions, I'm not getting choked out here. Like I can still breathe, I can still move and manipulate that firearm. Now I'm going to show you how to stow the sling onto your weapon system, keep it nice and tight using our elastic retainer that's built in. I'm going to take the rear section here and I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't move around too much and is on this back side of the stock here. Now it's not sliding up and down that much. I'm going to take the front section, slide this down all the way, take my rear section here and insert this into the elastic. Pull that nice and tight, cinch back this tri-glide in the rear section here as well, just to cut out any slack. Now when I want to deploy this, all I have to do is grab onto the sling and pull outward. Then I can deploy the sling and I'm good to go. When you have the sling stowed using the elastic retainer here, sometimes you might get issues where you have a little bit too much webbing in the rear section and you don't like this tab being too far forward. You can always tuck that in here like so. And when you want to deploy it, if you don't always want to grab off of the webbing here, you can actually grab by the pull tab. So when I'm in this position here, I can grab the pull tab, snap this open backwards here. It's going to open up the sling all the way, pull forward to just get that extra bit of slack, and slide this over and I'm good to go. Now I can shoulder transition if I need to, and I'm set. The biggest thing is you have to figure out exactly how your sling is going to mount for you, how you like it set up, because everyone's body is different and where you have your rear tri-glide set up is going to change some variables, also based on how you have the sling set up here. So if you were to mount closer to the receiver, sometimes it's good where you have to swing your rear section here all the way around and get that cinched up that way, and then tighten it up. Every once in a while you'll have to pull your quick adjust open a little bit more to get some more length sometimes, to get closer to that elastic. You have to figure it out for yourself, play around with it a little bit, but those general rules of thumb will get you to where you need to be. When you're stowing the sling, if you have any issues where you have too much webbing, one simple technique that you can use is just fold up that rear section in half, and then you can stow that into the elastic. It'll also make this a little bit tighter against the gun, so if your elastic's a little worn out or just doesn't seem to be quite where you want it and you want a little bit more tension, just fold up that webbing and double it up right here. Now it's going to be a lot tighter to the gun and you're good to go. When you want to deploy it, same functionality and you're all set. Most AKs have traditional mounting points built into them. They're not the best, but they're there and they work. They're hot and they're ready. So you can take the rear section of your sling and you can loop it through something of the like here, weaving it back through the tri-glide as so. Or in this case, we're going to use HK hooks. The reason being is they're easy to mount on. You can take them off, you can move them around. It's a pretty straightforward system that works on almost all AKs that are out there. So to do so, all you're going to do is weave that through, follow the tri-glide like you did before. Get that nice and tight, get rid of any extra tail, like so. You're set. It doesn't matter too much if you have the opening on the downside or the upside. It really depends on how you're manipulating your rifle. If you feel like it's going to be an issue, just flip it over, you're good to go. When you set this up, all you have to do is clip it onto there and you're set. Really straightforward operation. Looks like this when you're done. You can still use the sling in all the normal ways. There's no issues whatsoever. Performs just as well on an AK as it does an AR. All you have to do is figure out how you're going to connect it. You can do the same with paracord, tying it in through a loop through these mounts here. I don't recommend tying in any hot areas because most things do melt. Same thing with the stock. If you're going to go and tie paracord along the stock, keep in mind that it will slide around. Some of the stocks are going to be different, obviously, but for this one specifically, I probably wouldn't do paracord directly here because it's going to slide and might get in the way of my manual of arms. What I would do is I would mount to this rear section here. It's not quite wide enough, I don't think, to fit the sling directly through that. So again, probably going to go with an HK hook like so, because I can clip this in, mount that no problem, tie this in here, or I can use paracord just like I did on the MCX. Either way, you can mount a ESD sling to AKs, MP7s, ARs, whatever it is. There's a way to mount it because they're open-ended. Most traditional slings that have something sewn in limit you to whatever that method is. Whereas the ESD sling is open-ended with a bar tacked end, so it's not going to fray on you, come undone, anything of the like. And you can use whatever attachment method you want. Like we have HK hooks here, QD swivels, paracord, you name it.